Tēnā tātou katoa. My name's Haira. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Climate Change Adaptation at the Ministry for the Environment. The government has launched its consultation on New Zealand's National Adaptation Plan, or NAP. This is the first of a series of plans that will help New Zealand to adapt to the impact of climate change. Adaptation touches all areas of society. The Ministry for the Environment has been leading this work alongside partner agencies across government, including those involved in homes, buildings, infrastructure, community, the economy and the financial sector. Right now we are developing the first NAP and we are asking New Zealanders to give their feedback on the draft document to help us complete the plan. When finalised, it will include policies, strategies and proposals to help people understand the risks they face from climate change and actions they can take to adapt and build resilience. Your feedback on the draft plan is important. In particular, we want to hear about how climate change is already affecting you, the potential impacts you are concerned about, the actions you are already taking, and what else is needed. Over the last 110 years, our climate has warmed by 1.1 degrees Celsius, with 2016 being the warmest year on record. New Zealand is experiencing more hot days and fewer cold days. The kind of changes we are seeing are rising sea levels, more frequent flooding, coastal and inland erosion, and drought. The weather is more turbulent and less predictable. Recent reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change emphasise that we have an opportunity to act now to start adapting to the impacts of climate change while continuing the work to reduce emissions. The sooner we act, the more effective the action will be. Climate change impacts everyone in some way, and we've already seen this with extreme weather events across Aotearoa. However, it's likely that some people and services will be affected more and may be less able to respond. For example, many Māori communities live in coastal areas and are particularly sensitive to climate change impacts on the natural environment. Others, such as older people, may be reluctant to evacuate their homes after extreme events, and younger people are more prone to psychological impacts from these events. It is important that we plan for the impacts of climate change and develop adaptation strategies that minimise the risks while keeping our vulnerable communities safe. Our first adaptation plan is an important step forward for all New Zealanders to understand climate risks and adaptation. It sits alongside the emissions reduction plan, and together these two plans lay out New Zealand's overall response to climate change and to transition to a low emissions, climate resilient future. This first National Adaptation Plan brings together existing actions and our proposed future work into a multi-year work programme. We have a clear picture of the priority risks that New Zealand faces from climate change from the 2020 National Climate Change Risk Assessment. The first National Adaptation Plan sets out how we will address these risks over the next 6 years. These include risks to coastal ecosystems, community wellbeing, potable water supplies and buildings, amongst others. The actions will help enable all levels of government, Māori, the business sector and communities to better understand the risks and take action to address them. This plan is the first step in a long-term adaptation strategy and process and is focused on managing the uncertainty that comes with climate change longer term. In developing this plan, the government recognises and acknowledges the importance of an Indigenous worldview of climate change and has incorporated elements of a framework known as the Rauora Framework into the National Adaptation Plan. The Rauora Framework was developed by ihirangi, who have worked and partnered alongside the Ministry for the Environment in our climate change work. You can find the full report on the Rauora Framework on the Ministry for the Environment website. The Rauora Framework promotes transformative approaches and actions that will build resilience. The NAP focuses on 3 key priority areas. The first is to reform institutions to be fit for a changing climate. Existing systems and institutions which underpin how we plan for and respond to natural hazards or manage natural resources were designed for a climate of the past. These need to better reflect increased and changing climate impacts. We will reset New Zealand's most critical planning and response systems to deliver climate resilience and ensure decisions about how we manage our resources consider the future climate. The second focus area is data, information and guidance to enable everyone to assess and reduce their own climate risks. All New Zealanders will need to adapt to the impacts of climate change. The first step is to understand and assess the risks to you. Critical actions include developing an adaptation information portal and developing a program of target guidance across different sectors. The third area of focus is to embed climate resilience across government strategies and policies. What this means is we will embed the consideration of existing and future climate risk across government strategies and proposals to mainstream adaptation in government policy. As the first NAP, there is a significant focus on foundational system-wide change, which the government can support by providing the right settings and through its own spending. What this means is implementing legislation and institutional arrangements that are fit for purpose and provide clear roles and responsibilities. Greater clarity on roles and better information about climate risk can help people make better decisions on where and when to invest in adaptation action. Tools, guidance and methodologies can enhance adaptation capacity through risk management and adaptation planning. And the actions in this draft NAP will help unlock investment in climate resilience from all actors. All aspects of life in New Zealand rely on a thriving natural environment. It is essential for our physical and mental health, food and water security, culture and economy. And it contributes to climate resilience by buffering climate impacts while fostering well-being and sequestering carbon. From a Te Ao Māori perspective, the natural environment is interconnected through genealogical links to all parts of the environment. The natural environment encompasses all ecosystems, from the mountains, lakes and rivers, to native forests, coasts, oceans and farmlands, all of which are under threat from climate change. When the environment is unwell, this affects our health and our well-being. We want climate-resilient ecosystems that are healthy and diverse. We want to reduce pressure from pests and disease and from human activities. We also want to support working with nature to build resilience. This means building capacity for nature-based solutions by prioritising them through the Aotearoa New Zealand biodiversity strategy. Other critical actions to meet these objectives include implementing the Department of Conservation's Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan and delivering a collection of actions run by Biosecurity New Zealand. As the loss of resilience in natural systems will have far-reaching impacts on Māori, it's essential we include mātauranga Māori within adaptation strategies and undertake meaningful consultation with Māori. The form, design and characteristics of our homes, buildings and places play a vital role in determining our quality of life. They shape our identity, what we do and how we feel, and they're essential for communities to thrive. As the climate changes, an increasing number of homes and buildings are at risk of becoming less livable, damaged or destroyed. Most of our homes and buildings have been located and built without the future climate in mind. A changing climate may affect the durability and lifespan of our homes and buildings. Damage to existing housing stock could have knock-on effects for the country's housing quality, supply and affordability, weakening social cohesion and preventing communities from growing. This would have the greatest impact on people who are already experiencing poor housing outcomes. It could also increase the number of individuals and whānau at risk of experiencing homelessness. Many communities will face challenges conserving their taonga and cultural infrastructure, and the unique cultural and spiritual connection Māori have to whenua may be threatened by climate-related hazards. We have 4 key objectives in this area. Firstly, ensuring homes and buildings are climate resilient and meet social and cultural needs. This means helping communities to understand and respond to risks and reducing the physical impacts of climate change. Secondly, ensuring new and existing places are planned and managed to minimise risks to communities from climate change. This means effective urban planning design for the future climate, supporting existing places to adapt and supporting the relocation of people and assets when needed. Thirdly, strengthening Māori connections to whenua and places of cultural value through partnership. This means working in partnership with iwi and Māori to develop Māori-led solutions that identify and embed Māori knowledge, identity and values. And fourthly, ensuring threats to cultural heritage places arising from climate change are understood and impacts minimised. This means understanding how climate change could affect cultural heritage sites and enabling communities to maintain and protect their taonga and assets. Infrastructure underpins our society. It provides the services we depend on to live, work, learn and play. Our goal is to have infrastructure that is resilient to a changing climate so that it protects and enhances the well-being of all New Zealanders. This includes energy generation and distribution, telecommunications and data services, land, sea and air transport, drinking and wastewater services, and waste management. Infrastructure is not just about physical assets, but the services they provide and what that means for people's well-being. Climate change will affect every aspect of the infrastructure system, from construction and maintenance to daily operations and long-term planning. We need to address a range of impacts, from changes to the cost and availability of construction materials as supply chains are impacted, direct physical impacts from risks like extreme weather events and sea level rise, and changes to demand as a result of a changing climate, such as increased demand for water for irrigation as rainfall patterns change. Because infrastructure is so long-lived, most of what we have today will still serve our communities for many decades to come as we experience more impacts of climate change. That gives us a unique opportunity to understand future risks and to begin to adapt now so existing infrastructure stays reliable and new assets are developed in the right places, at the right scale and with the right adaptation measures. Adapting infrastructure early could also make our services more reliable, provide better value for money and improve accessibility, affordability, equity and social cohesion. The objectives for infrastructure intend to support action across the infrastructure life cycle, from investment decisions and planning to design and construction and operation and maintenance. The actions developed for the NAP aim to build on the work already underway by asset owners, including their obligations as lifeline utilities, and support a system-level shift in understanding and managing risk for all infrastructure. Belonging to a community is an integral part of our way of life here in Aotearoa New Zealand. In this section of the NAP, communities are predominantly considered geographically, as this makes sense in relation to the often localised impacts of climate change. Of course, communities centred on ethnicity and identity are also incredibly important. We need to take action for communities to help them to understand the magnitude of the risks and hazards from climate change. Understanding of risk is the most critical first step in becoming climate resilient. We want to ensure that communities have the capacity to continually grow their resilience so that they can be healthy, connected and strong against all challenges, not just climate events. This section of the NAP has a particular focus on communities who are more likely to be affected by climate change. This may be due to their physical location, socio-economic situation, a physical disability, or a number of other factors. It's important to support these communities so they are receiving the same level of care and service as the rest of the population in a way that reflects their needs, perspective and circumstances. Climate change is already affecting New Zealand's economy. Between 2007 and 2017, the contribution of climate change to floods and droughts alone cost New Zealanders an estimated $840 million in insured damages. Climate change threatens our supply chains, private and public assets, and key export sectors. It is clear that climate risks will vary markedly across the country. Some groups are more vulnerable than others to climate change, and future pathways will need to be forged for these groups. Because of their reliance on the environment, New Zealand's primary industries and tourism sector are sensitive to changes in climate. These sectors need to adapt to increased weather events such as droughts and storms, changes to the growing season, changes to the location of fish stocks, and the decline of tourist attractions, including glaciers. There will be significant impacts to the Māori economy as it is heavily invested in these sectors. Although some businesses are aware of these risks, few have considered the specific impacts they will face or have started planning to address climate-related risks and opportunities. The scale of these long-term economic costs and benefit will depend on actions across society. Everyone has a role to play. What we want to achieve is a high-wage and low-emissions economy which adapts and builds resilience to a changing climate. We've identified two key objectives to achieve this outcome. The first is that sectors, businesses, and regional economies can adapt and participants can identify risks and take action. The second is that a resilient financial system underpins economic stability and growth, and participants can identify, disclose, and manage their climate risks. The NAP's Economy and Financial System chapter sets out the government's plan to realise these objectives by supporting businesses and decision makers to better understand and respond to climate change. Consultation on managed retreat will occur alongside the NAP consultation. One of the key actions within the NAP is the development of new legislation to address the complex issues associated with managed retreat. Managed retreat refers to a carefully planned and managed process of relocating assets, activities, and sites of cultural significance away from areas that face intolerable risk levels. This is an important adaptation option for New Zealanders because both our geography and location of settlements, plus the increasing impacts of climate change and natural hazards, mean many places may be subject to risks that are no longer tolerable. Managed retreat raises highly complex policy and funding challenges, which may not be able to be addressed through our current system. While there have been some instances where people have been supported to retreat, these have been ad hoc and often come with significant costs. It's important to remember that retreat is one option within a broader toolkit, and in many cases, communities may choose other measures as part of an adaptation planning process. This consultation is an early opportunity to have your say on some high-level questions to inform the design of a managed retreat system. We want to hear about how climate change is already affecting you, what you're concerned about, the actions you're already taking, and what else can be done. We encourage you to make a submission on our website and to attend one of our workshops for discussion and questions. We want to hear from everyone so that we can work together to build a New Zealand that is resilient in a changing climate.